So, welcome to episode 2 of the Breaking Bio podcast. Again, I'm Steven Hamblin, hosting from Sydney, Australia. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at UNSW. And today with me are Rafael. Go ahead.
How's it going?
You may remember him from episode 1, and he of the Great Internet Connection. And we have another of our co-hosts today, new to the podcast, as it were.
I'm Morgan Jackson. I'm a research assistant at the University of Guelph, and I am an insect taxonomist by trade when I actually do work, which is most of the time, honest.
All right, so let's just get right into what we're going to talk about today. And of course, we're going to lead off with what had to be the biggest news event of 2012 so far, the death of Lonesome George the tortoise, he of the Galapagos. So, reactions.
It's kind of like the Mr. Burns of the tortoise world, or the Pinta tortoise world, I guess. The last one to survive, taking all the cash from the grave of the rest of them that they made the deal with. But, I guess his race is over finally.
I think that may be the weirdest metaphor ever applied to a tortoise I've ever heard.
It's better than a hare. I mean, when was the last time you saw a hare actually race a tortoise? So I say the Simpsons Burns reference is just as relevant in this regard.
All right, well, we're going with the Simpsons then. Okay. Now, I was actually really amused by this story because, like I was saying, I mean, you know, on Twitter you see all these people who are suddenly outpouring their grief over George the tortoise, and you know, most of them had clearly no idea who the tortoise was, what the significance was, you know, whether it was a marine animal or not, you know.
It's a dinosaur.
Yeah.
So did you follow it all? I mean, did it get a big repercussion? Did it trend or anything like that? Like it didn't really.
It did seem to, truthfully. There seemed to be a lot of sudden interest in it, which kind of caught me by surprise. I mean, I only knew about George because I was reading a biography of Darwin and thought, hey, these tortoises sound kind of cool. I would have never heard about him otherwise. And, you know, theoretically, yeah. If anyone's going to know about the tortoise, you know, it should be us. Is it something that you guys had really run into before?
I don't know. Actually, now that you think of it, I guess I would probably, same thing, expose via Darwin, but I don't think it's something that's regularly come up, other than, you know, the odd conservation paper or story about these tortoises are pretty much doomed.
I actually saw a few stories which said, you know, he was the last tortoise in the Galapagos Islands, which, of course, not so much. There's 20,000 other tortoises. They kind of missed the conservation point of the story, but like he's not exactly a cultural icon here.
In Pinta he was. I'm pretty sure he was big news on Pinta for, you know, the last 100 years, but maybe outside of Pinta not so much.
I mean, yeah, to be honest, I mean, I'm gonna sound really dumb now, but I thought he was already dead. Like,
that was debunked on Twitter like 6 months ago.
Like, did his partner die a couple years ago or something like that? Like, because I don't know. I recalled hearing this before, and then I started seeing everyone talking about it. I was like, oh, okay. So I guess now it's for real. It got me a little bit by surprise.
Well, no. I mean, they were trying to mate him for a while. And
yeah, with a different subspecies. That failed.
Yeah. Can't imagine why that didn't go so well. I mean, plus he was still like 90 at the time they were trying to pair him off. I mean, that's an Anna Nicole Smith situation there. Like,
the Hugh Hefner of tortoises. There we go.
Yeah. I mean, he's one step away from the Playboy mansion of tortoises.
Oh yeah, we went there.
He's dead now. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, he had a good life.
Hey, you know, if you think about it, conservation biology can get really weird sometimes. And it's one of those times, you know. you're playing a little soft bow chicka wow wow in the background, getting the tortoises all going up in the front. I don't know how.
They make
I don't know
really weird noises too, like turtles in general. So I wouldn't want to see that. Or yeah.
George Attenborough, or David Attenborough, wow, did I just mess up David Attenborough's name? That's a major fail there. David Attenborough did recently narrate a turtle porn scene, so perhaps...
I know, that was brilliant. Yeah, with the shoe, right, was it?
Yeah, the croc, which may be the first clue why these tortoises are going extinct.
But you know, the whole story actually reminds me of a talk I heard early in my undergrad. And my wife's never let me forget it because she thinks that this woman does the most cool science ever. But it was Suzanne MacDonald, and she's out of York, actually. She was doing work in the zoos trying to get the big cats to mate, and she was having trouble. They just weren't feeling it.
They wanted Barry White, and they kept playing the wrong thing, eh?
Yeah, well, she was trying everything, and then apparently, I mean, she's talking about this during her talk, she got pissed off and just decided to start spraying perfume all over the place. And it turned out that the thing that got the engine running was Calvin Klein's Obsession.
No way.
Wow. Yeah. Now you know that it works for attracting big cats as well. Note to self, when on safari, don't wear Calvin Klein.
Or drive a fast Jeep.
It's true.
No, I mean, I haven't been able to live up to that ever since. It's been 10 years. And my wife keeps asking me why I don't work with tigers, but, you know, I guess I just don't do cool science.
You're an Armani man, obviously.
Yeah, that's my excuse. I'm the Old Spice of evolutionary biology. I don't know. Is there anything left to say about George now, or have we completely destroyed his memory?
I think we've done a good job of slandering his fallen body at this point.
Poor George. Sorry about that.
We had good intentions.
One of the other stories that caught my eye this week was the Loch Ness creation teachings in, where is it? It's in the U.S., but I don't know exactly where. Anybody know?
Always in the U.S.
I would assume somewhere south of the Dixie line, but I don't really.
Hey, I'm
the southern state of Louisiana. It's Louisiana.
Ironically, the story I was reading was from the Scotsman, so I don't know.
And we wonder why we're confused here.
This has to be a comment on something, right? Like, I can't help feeling that this story is getting at something deep in our culture, in the way we deal with science. The idea that this is, a killer line of attack on evolutionary theory, like, this makes sense to them.
I think the idea is that in some bizarre way, if you prove that dinosaurs and humans lived at the same time, in the same period, evolution is false. It's a brilliant argument that spans from that.
They were claiming that Loch Ness is actually a pliosaur, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. And a friend of mine mentioned, well, if that's the argument, then no one tell them about the birds, because depending on how you see it, we do live at the same time as the dinosaurs do. So
there's no depending on how you see it. Strict Gladys, it's right there.
So,
they are dinosaurs.
So there you go.
Yeah, but then you get into the.
But they're not accepting that.
That would imply they evolved, so I guess that kind of breaks the argument right off the very first bat.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's just crazy. Like, how desperate must you have to be to have to use a fictional creature as your argument? It's mind blowing. It's just like humanity. You don't cease to surprise me.
I don't want to turn this into an atheist podcast, but the irony of you calling them out for using a fictional creature.
Yeah, exactly.
Bazinga.
It does cross my mind. Well, on the other hand, the Bible does contain references to unicorns. So
this article also claims that a Japanese whaling boat once caught a dinosaur. So perhaps they actually caught a narwhal, which was the unicorn, and then they turned it into a dinosaur. I don't know. But I'm not really sure how many dinosaurs are aquatic for getting into the brass tacks here.
Well, we'll have to get a few paleontologists on as guest hosts.
Next time we'll have to outsource.
Well,
Tell us all about this.
That's what I get for hooking up with a bunch of bug people. I mean,
that's true. You shouldn't have expected much more.
Well, where's the breaking weekly biology news on bugs, huh?
Well, Tom was covering it yesterday on his blog with the whole glowing sperm. That was entomologically related. Tom getting completely overcome by fly sperm. I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
The little raven in the utero.
I didn't get a chance to read that story. What was he posting about?
Oh, somebody was looking at sperm competition from different males in utero within the female's reproductive tract. So they what's it called when they not dyed it, but they added tagged it. Sorry, with two different fluorescing colors, and so you can actually see the green squigglies running one way and the red squigglies running the other way. And it would be good to have Tom here to explain it more because all I got was squigglies out of it, obviously.
Yeah, it reminded me of those old arcade off-run games, where you see like the track and it's like an 8-figure and the little cars running around. Yeah,
it's totally Lemmings for sperm.
Lemmings for sperm.
Remember the little lemmings where you had to get them through the level and they had to have some of them got sacrificed and you needed the ladders and come on. Sperm lemmings, this is where we're going with this. We are so far off topic.
If we had a show title, Lemmings for Sperm would be
Perhaps that can be the next Photoshop.
Oh God. Going from sperm, I think we can head straight to mathematics. I'm actually kind of interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this next topic because, you guys tend to be a little more empirical than I am, But I actually blogged about this yesterday. There was a story going around on Twitter about a newly released paper by Tim Fawcett and Andy Higginson. And it was looking at the number of citations a paper receives as a function of the number of equations that it contains within it. And they actually, it was a pretty interesting finding. I mean, they discovered that, after controlling for a few things, if you have more equations in a paper, it tends to reduce the number of citations that paper will get. And they had some sensible advice on how to deal with this, especially because they found that if you put equations in an appendix, that it didn't reduce the number of citations nearly as much, or it had no effect. And so, they were trying to talk about, how to increase crosstalk between empiricists and theorists. And I thought it was a good paper. But of course, going around on Twitter, I mean, all you're seeing is things like, scientists are scared of math, and biologists quiver at the sight of it. And what do you guys think? I mean, to start with, do papers that are theory heavy or math heavy, do they put you off? Do they bother you?
I pretty much avoid them like the plague. I didn't even like stats, which is why I got into taxonomy, where we have very limited stats, and I don't have to worry about p-values and ANOVAs and stuff like that. So that's the beauty of taxonomy in my mind. So generally, if I see an equation in a paper, I've had to read a couple of Bayesian papers and stuff like that talking about Bayesian inference, and I'd pretty much gloss over by about the third sentence and pretend that I read the rest of the paper in some instances. So I'm one of those people that wouldn't read those at all.
All right, so that was distressingly honest. Okay.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, the result is not really surprising, right? I mean, just by talking to other biologists, that's pretty much what you would expect. It's always interesting to see it quantified and, you know, in your face. Here's the evidence. But yeah, biologists are afraid of math. Who knew?
I can see that being true to some extent. But on one hand, I mean, I know that there's a lot of really mathematically astute biologists out there. And, I mean, I think Tim and Andy had a point in that, you know, we need to find a way to communicate the mathematical results better, you know, so that, you know, guys like you can use them more effectively. Well, I'm sitting right here. I'm a theoretical biologist. If you were to come from the other point of view and ask me to change something about the way, you know, I communicate theory to make it easier to understand, what would you guys say?
Crickets.
I mean, that's the problem, right? Because, I mean, it's not like these equations are not important. You know, they're there for a reason. You know, we're supposed to understand them as we're reading the paper. And it's challenging, I guess. I like papers that have, like, examples, like when there's, like, complex mathematical models. Like, if they're always when there's, like, a worked example, or, you know, that usually helps. So is it something that is on your mind when you're writing a paper, Steve? Like, how is an empiricist going to read this? How am I? Yeah,
actually, at least in part because, well, my master's lab was a mix of theory and empirical people. My PhD lab was actually mostly empirical, and I was kind of the lone computer jockey. So, you know, I've spent a lot of time around empiricists, and I've had to get really good at explaining why they should give a crap about what I'm doing, you know, convincing them that this is something worthwhile. So, yeah, you know, it is on my mind a lot when I read this. And now that I'm in a really heavily theory-based lab, you know, like, you know, these are some pretty big mathematical guns I'm sitting around with. And I find that I'm always asking, you know, what's the story? Why, you know, why do we care? In a way that is trying to draw the empirical connections. So I am left with a legacy of that. But yeah, it's always on my mind.
So do you do anything about it? So you're thinking about it? Like, is there anything you could do to, like I said, I don't really read these things, so that's why I'm pretty quiet here.
Your equations to the appendix.
Yeah, pretty much. Other than moving your equations to the appendix and writing nice synopses in the abstract saying exactly what you did and why I should care about it. Like, how could you improve it, I guess? Do you have any instances of where, or any papers that you can think of where somebody's done a good job of simplifying or reaching out with their theories in a way that may be more attainable for the rest of us noobs?
It's a good question. Actually, in the paper, Tim and Andy have a really good, you know, viewpoint, which is that it's not just about reducing the number of equations or moving them to the appendix. It's about being, you know, as clear and specific as possible with the equations that you highlight, and also focusing heavily on the assumptions that go into these models and the connections to empirical work. So, you know, putting a huge focus on, you know, where the links are with empirical literature, you know, in connection to the math. You know, what does the math have to say about it? Focus your explanation on that. And yeah, I think that's a really good viewpoint and something to focus on for theoreticians. that we need to pay attention to, why people like you are going to care, and how to craft a story that speaks to you. Because, mathematicians, look, I love them, but they're not great storytellers a lot of the time. They're very straightforward, extremely logical people, but they don't really have the ability to kind of get in your head and make you care about something. And I'm going to get flamed for that, I know.
By all 5 mathematicians that are watching this, I'm going to guess.
Well, somebody out there will write an angry blog post, and then I'm screwed, damn it.
You're done.
Yeah.
But even biologists, that's not limited to mathematicians. Last year at the Evolution Conference, there was a meeting with editors. There were the editors of American Naturalist, Evolution, and Journal of Evolutionary Biology. They were giving tips about how to get published in their journals and things like that. And they stressed that a lot. Like, you guys need to really learn and focus on telling a story. You got to tell a convincing story that has good connections and so on. So, yeah, it's a problem faced by non-mathematicians as well.
Yeah, I can see that. But, sorry, lost my train of thought.
It's all this math, I'm telling you.
Just talking about it, it's exhausting.
If we put this in the appendix, then we'd all be still fresh as daisies.
A podcast appendix.
Yeah, it's an additional 6 hours of material, which is just verbal descriptions of equations.
Squiggly line here, squiggly line there. Square root of that squiggly line. Yeah.
No, it's...
But I don't want to take away from theorists, because I know there's things that you guys are like light years ahead of us in the world of biology, of what's going to come next.
Yeah, light years ahead.
Like, you're the Einstein of theoretical biology, right? This is what I've been led to believe.
If by Einstein you mean I'm probably going to end up working in a patent office, maybe. Well, I can't even go for the hair. I mean, that smug bastard with hair 6 feet out from his head. Yeah, no, he was quite the ladies' man. Him and Feynman. I'm trying to think of famous biologists who are, the same way, but...
Well, Darwin had to get stuck with his cousin, so that doesn't really help.
Yeah, he didn't do too good.
No, not so much. Probably being stuck on a ship for a couple of years didn't help at all.
Yeah, he wasn't so good with the ladies at all, was he? I mean, he was having lady troubles when he left on the voyage, and things just never really seemed to turn around for him. Yeah.
Then he got into barnacle wieners, and that was it.
It's a big turnoff.
Not a good icebreaker in Victoria, I imagine.
I don't even know where to go from there, so I think we can actually call that a wrap for the day.
I'm sorry.
No, hey, that's I think you just doubled our viewership. From 1 to 2.
Those search terms are going to be all sorts of crazy now.
I don't know if I can afford to be associated with this podcast. Well,
I don't know about you guys. I'm having a hell of a time here. So
this entire episode.
Yeah, it's been great.
This entire episode is going in the blooper reel. All right, so that's episode 2, I guess. I'd like to thank both of you for joining me this time on the Breaking Bio podcast, Rafael and Morgan. And we'll see you next time.
See ya. Oh no.
Make a wish.
That's that in my head.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Pirate, what the fuck, cat?
It really likes the birthday.
Who doesn't?